Go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us here today for NFTs are more than monkey Jpegs. We started having this conversation outside in the couple minutes beforehand, and it was a super interesting debate, so I think we're really going to get into it today. For those of you who don't know, Stareable Fest is the premier annual indie TV and web series festival in the US, the new home for digital creative talent in the TV industry. We honor the year's best content and provide a space for the next generation of creators to connect with industry executives, grow their network, learn new skills, and build community. Stareable Fest is presented by Dell Technologies with NVIDIA and Intel, making workstation and monitor solutions purpose-built for creators like you. Stareable Fest LA is held in partnership with XRM Media Studios, which is the incredible venue we're all in right now. I'm your host today. My name is Ajay Kishore. I'm the founder and CEO of Stareable. I'm excited to bring up our two guests. Rennie Araucto oversees strategy at the Fantasy Network, the sci-fi fantasy streaming service for indie creators, and is the CEO of Zombie Orpheus Entertainment, where he has produced multiple award-winning films. In previous lives, Rennie was an educator, a tech consultant, an actor, a music director. He has 3 college-bound kids, builds Lego, orders a Vespa Martini, and finds joy working with artists and creators.
Hi.
Berti Sue is a 3-time Primetime Emmy Award-winning interactive creator and showrunner. His most decorated works include Artificial, the Twitch original live interactive science fiction series, which ran for 4 seasons, Emma Approved, the multi-platform YouTube adaptation of Jane Austen's Emma, and the Lizzie Bennet Diaries, the groundbreaking transmedia YouTube series. Throughout his career, he has also produced series for PBS Digital Studios, Maybelline, Chispa, and the Young Turks, along with selling projects into development to ABC, YouTube Premium, Sony Crackle, and MTV, which he did his incredible How to Pitch workshop yesterday on. Bernie is currently the creative content officer of Meta Theory, an interactive franchise studio, utilizing Web3 and crypto technology to build immersive story worlds that expand across interactive shows to play and earn video games.
What's happening? Good to see y'all again, those of you who were here yesterday.
So I know a lot of us are very curious. We hear this term a lot, but I want to start really high level. NFT stands for non-fungible token. What is that?
I'm trying to think of how to frame it to the audience we have. You want to go first?
Sure. I like to talk about what it's not necessarily. Like an NFT is not a digital collectible, but a digital collectible could be, right? An NFT. I like to call it a certificate of authenticity that is basically publicly available on the blockchain. So that's simply how I put it. How would you put it, Bernie?
That's pretty accurate. I think when he says certificate of authenticity, think about going to collectible for a second. When you have a collectible, you may see a little certificate on it that says 1 of 5,000, 2 of 5,000, or 5,000. So the fungible token is the certificate, not necessarily the art, right? The certificate is tied to the art. So in this case, the token certificate is tied to the art, which is why you say, oh, there's a JPEG of a blue monkey that's worth $1 million that Justin Bieber just bought, and you're like, that's ridiculous. He's not necessarily buying the monkey, he's buying the certificate that's tied to the monkey that authenticates that. Just the same way, like I use an example outside, Starry Night, the painting, is at the Metropolitan Theater, okay? How do I know that's the real Starry Night? There's a governance body of Sotheby's or Christie's or whatever, of curators that says, that's the one, that's the one. Now, are there other duplicate paintings that people have, whether it be forged legally or just matched it? Yeah, they're out there. If you bought it, do you own the Starry Night? No, you own a copy of it, right? And so the original one is there because of the authenticity of the certificate, we'll say.
Yeah, and that's sort of an interesting example. I like to think about Rolex, right? We all own Rolexes, right? No, we buy fake ones in New York, right? We buy fake ones. I have to think of Burbank here. No, but using the watch as an example, they look the same. How do you know that one's a real Rolex? Well, Rolex themselves has a database with that number, that ID of who purchases it. But Rolex owns that database. And so if I want to authenticate it, I have to call up Rolex. And they'll say, well, who are you, Rennie? And I'm like, well, I'm nobody. Well, okay, well, we only work with authorized resellers of this thing, so we're not going to give you that information. With NFTs, that data is publicly available across the board. So what it does is it allows people to verify the authenticity regardless of who you are. So it's a publicly available certificate of authenticity.
So using that example, using the Justin Bieber bought JPEG of a monkey for $1 million, any of us right now could open up our phones, knowing the right place to go. You can see that he bought it for $1 million. You can see the history of all the transactions of that JPEG before that. Did he buy it from someone else? Who sold it to him? Who got it before him? Who got it before that person? All that history, date of transaction, and amount is all public, all on the blockchain, and it's there for anybody to see it. So it's what you're looking at really is like it's public knowledge. Now you don't necessarily know who specifically bought it. You see it tied to a wallet, and that wallet may be tied to a public person, like a Bieber or like a Shaq. They have very public wallets, but it may just be some rich dude somewhere who just like decided to spend $500,000 on a JPEG of a monkey. So yeah, that's kind of one of the things. Go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say. So it sounds like the major value add is being able to accurately and publicly track ownership.
Well, that's
the transformative part of it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because you can do that, it's transformative. So think about it from now. I'm going to frame it back to the filmmakers in the room and the writers and directors in the room. Okay, so if I'm a studio and I sign you I do a development deal with you, that contract is only between you and me. Okay, and technically it's not public. I mean, I guess you could post it, but it's probably a violation of the contract. It's probably in the contract that you can't disclose it. Okay, and then the deal I make as a studio with the other producers or the other actors or whoever that you don't get to see, those aren't public either. But in this case, not specifically with this example, but the idea of that the contracts are public is very transformative. The idea of that. So imagine that you as an actor do a deal with a producer, you see that deal. Then the producer does a deal with the studio, and you see that deal, and then you can accurately go, oh, what that is. And so what it is right now in the current space, the Wild Westy 1.0 version of the Web3 space, makes sense. The Bored Ape Yacht Club, as the prime example, and all NFTs do this, I think, is what they'll do is they'll build a royalty into the contract. Okay, so what that means is that the Bored Ape Yacht Club, the company, anytime someone sells a JPEG to someone else or the token, they get a royalty of 5%, no matter how many times it sells. So if it sells 15 times, they get 15 royalties of the 5% of the transaction, right? And you go like, that's how it should be. But that's not how it is in our world. Van Gogh the state doesn't get any money when they sell a Van Gogh today. It's not, right? They just sell the Van Gogh. So imagine now it's transformative. So if you generate the art, whatever it is, a movie, a script, a JPEG of a monkey, whatever it is, and that thing sells 15 times, you as the generative inventor of the piece, in practice, should get the royalty each time it sells, right? Right? That's what this allows you to do now. So that you as an artist should remember that part very clearly. Go ahead.
That's just one aspect, but why it's really exciting to artists. So a friend of mine makes Magic the Gathering cards, or used to be an artist for Magic the Gathering and Pokemon. And what would happen is the card that they created, I think he made like $500 for that piece of art. Originally, the original Magic artist got $500 per piece of art. And so there are cards today that are selling for $10,000 a card. But this person sees nothing of it. The person who makes the money would be me if I have that card, right? I make $10,000 selling this thing that I bought for 13 cents or whatever it was. But is that really right? Well, I don't know about right, but I would love to see these artists get some of that. And so with this technology, it allows a percentage of that total transaction to go back to the artist regardless, which is pretty awesome. It's pretty great. But that's just one aspect of NFTs, right?
I was gonna jump back to something that Berti said. So Bored Ape Yacht Club, one of the famous NFT organizations. What is that?
So, not being an expert at the Bored Ape Yacht Club, so it is most likely probably the most famous NFT collection in the world right now. It's also, from my understanding, the most valuable, and it's the most traded, volume. cash volume wise, not transaction wise. And so what happened was, actually I think it was a year to this week, I think, is when they first launched, they say minted. You mint the piece. They minted the 10,000 Bored Ape Yacht Clubs. They're all different looking apes. They all have various expressions and so forth, and colors and hats and things. So 10,000 existed. I don't remember what the mint price was, but I believe it was a couple $100 for each one. Okay, it's around that. Nothing what it is now. So now this is the extreme example because this is the most successful one. In a year's time, I believe the cheapest one that you can get right now is like 150 ETH, which means it's $500,000, like the cheapest one. Okay, Justin Bieber famously bought one a couple weeks ago for $1 million. So he bought one of the rarer ones, and so when you look at that, it's like, oh, I own a picture of this ape, but no, you're part of this exclusive club that has this piece. Just like if you have a Rolex or a Lamborghini, or you're part of a yacht club or a country club or so forth. So that's what the kind of the thing is now. Now they've done all sorts of things. The company has released more different collections that do things. They have one that with dogs. They have one with apes that look really crazy. They call them mutant apes. There's all sorts of basic things there. But think about the idea that every time one of these images sells for 10,000 and 20,000 and 30,000 and 40,000, 50,000, the Bored Ape Yacht Club, the company, is getting a 5% royalty on that each time. So that $1 million transaction and the 15 or 20 before that for the Justin Bieber ape, they got 15% of each one of those. So they're making bank off of just the transactions. Like they don't technically need to do anything else. And then again, those of you who are thinking, oh my God, there's so much money out there. I'm warning you, this is the most successful one of all the ones in the world. So I'm just using this as a highlight of what the possibilities are.
So I guess that's one thing that's interesting is there's clear applicability here in terms of being able to create a royalty structure and making sure that creators get paid. But it feels like it's also really combined with a lot of speculation and some bubblish type activity, right?
Of course.
So how do you think about separating those two things, or how do you think about what the long-term vision is, or how you kind of plan for that sort of long-term vision?
You got
Yeah. So I think this is. I'm going to pivot just a little bit on the question and get back to it. I think one of the challenges with NFTs and what we're talking about now is there's a lot of cynicism around it. People go, well, I can have a JPEG on my desktop of this thing. Why would I care? Those people are just blowing a lot of money for nothingness, right? And this is just one aspect of NFTs. So if we're thinking about using it to generate some type of capital to be able to create more art, I don't know if it will or will not be effective, because some people just don't buy into this. My production, Zombie Orpheus Entertainment, we built our success on the audience participating in the things that we do. They love our products, so they give us money. And we did it through crowdfunding. I can raise about $500,000 for our films, which is pretty amazing. But we spent a lot of time building our audience. At least half of that audience thinks NFTs are crap. And so it becomes this vitriolic discussion on our Discord servers, because half of them say, you cannot go that way. If you do, I'm leaving. I mean, it's such a passionate feeling because they feel like it's exploitative. And there's lots of different reasons why. So as you're looking into blockchain, you need to start spending time what are the political ramifications of it? What are the weird psychological impacts of it? But what I've done is we've sort of pivoted away from the entirety of blockchain and started explaining how we can use it in a way that empowers our community. And so what we ended up doing is saying, you as fans can participate in our streams. And so what they'll do is, right now they tip to participate in our streams. We do these tabletop role-playing experiences. So people, they spend $5, $100 or whatever to cause an impact on these players, like facing a dragon, or I'm going to give you a new sword. So what we've done is we've pivoted it and given people essentially NFTs, so that these cards, these environment-changing things, or these monsters, or whatever it is that they can participate in, they can buy them, and instead of being a tip, it is now an NFT, but I just don't call it that. And by not calling it that, they feel safer about it. If they ask me about it, I say, well, it's a certified, authentic mechanism for doing this. And then I don't tell them that it's NFTs, and it makes it more safe. So, but that's not a JPEG. That becomes more of an action that they own that they can participate in. And so there's different ways to use these tools to empower your communities to raise money. And so this way, like, I think we bring in about $2,000 to $5,000 a month in this type of revenue to support our streaming, our actors who are involved in streaming. So this is a really cool way to do so. And it's not quite answering your question, but it's.
No, I think that is what I'm trying to highlight is, you know, how do you create that sort of utility from this technology, right? Like, how do you actually think about bringing your audience into the content and making it something that's less focused on this speculation, right? This idea that, you know, you're going to buy an NFT for $100 and sell it for $500,000, and more about kind of the long-term building of it.
Yeah, I think that's one of the things that, you know, got me interested in doing this talk here with you all, is this like being in entertainment and straddling entertainment and tech, and being here in LA. It's like you see these industry talks about NFTs, and it's like buzzwords, like, oh, we're gonna do money, multiverse, metaverse, all that stuff, NFTs. And when I dig into what they talk about, they kind of focus on the money raising part. It's the idea is like, oh, I'm gonna do a film, I'm gonna make 10,000 NFTs, and I'm gonna sell 10,000 NFTs to fund the film. I'm like, well, then you're just basically doing Kickstarter. Like, you just do Kickstarter for that, if that's the goal. It's like, what does the NFT do? Like, what does it mean, you know? And so, and of course, you know, the audience too, as Rennie said. So like, what's more interesting to me, and what you mentioned, is like, what does the NFT get you to do? And it's what they call utility. It's like, you know, oh, you're part of the exclusive club. Well, that's a simple one. That's an easy one. Or you get the power to throw a dragon into the story if you want to. If you built that in your story. Or there's one that's just the kind of governance of it. So it's like, hypothetically, let's say, oh, we all make a film together, and we sell the NFTs at 10,000 of them, and they're governance tokens, meaning that the IP is split into 10,000 ways. And then now, based on the token holders can now vote on choices of the business, not the story. Let's assume like the script is done, you know, the money, we shot the film is locked. We're not choose your own adventuring this here at all. It's like, now you can go like, okay, community of people in this room that own NFTs, maybe you own like 50 of them and you own 20 of them, so you have 50 votes versus just 20 votes, like stock, right? And you go, okay, well, you know, we have 2 offers on the table for distribution now. We can go with them, and they have a higher upfront cost, pay to us, but they have terrible back end versus the other company that has great back end and a terrible upfront. Like, now it gets interesting of like how you build community with you, and as you build your films and so forth. So that's an interesting way. I've seen that being talked about a bit. Kind of interesting to me. But that's where I feel that, you know, why you are NFTing. Like, you kind of need to think about the utility of it. The collectible part of it, that's easy. Like, that's simple. So right now the big companies, Disney, Warner Brothers, they have NFTs. Like, you can go buy Batman NFTs and so forth, but they're just collectibles. They don't give you any say in what Batman does. They don't give you any kind of say in like what, you know, this series of issues of the comic book, which they totally could do, and you say like, hey, audience, who do you want the villain to be in this of Batman Goes to the Jungle episode 6, right? And they see what that is. So those are the areas that they can play with, and then they're obviously not going to give you control of the Batman IP because it's Warner Brothers, but if you're starting out, you could try to push that risk, right? Like, you could try to make that experiment. Like I'm going to build a superhero with you all from scratch, and because you bought in early, you're going to feel that ownership power. And then assuming it's successful, if you want to sell and you have 50 of the tokens, you want to sell 10 of them to make some money back. Cool, that's you. But then now new people can come into it and so forth. So there's a lot of possibility. I'm going to stop because I'm going to ramble off on tangents.
That's a really exciting part for me as a filmmaker. It's a really exciting part, which is being able to influence canon and giving the audience the opportunity to do so. So, and I think about Star Wars. There's those of you who love Star Wars or grew up with it, you might have played with your action figures or told stories or pretended to be whoever within in this universe. And that was, for me growing up, that was a huge, powerful thing. People started doing cool movies and fun movies. You might have seen Troops. This was years ago that sort of made the rounds. It was a huge thing because people were able to tell funny stories within this universe. About 12 years ago or 10 years ago, Lucasfilm put the kibosh on all of that. And people were really upset that, well, why can't I tell stories in this amazing thing? And apparently, I guess it was because they were trying to negotiate a sale to Disney, and that's why. But regardless, it hurt the community. And that told me that when you empower a community to tell stories in an IP, it's only better for the IP, right? Because they live in it. In our IP, I go to the Gen Con, a big Hobbit tabletop gaming convention. People dress up as our characters that nobody else knows. They dress up in wizard hats and all. It's crazy, right? When they participate, it creates longevity. With NFTs, what we're empowering the audience to do is to actually add to canon. And so there's a way for you to be able to participate in the storytelling devices, and we've created mechanics for that are all part of the blockchain so that they can do things to add to canon. And it's a way where we can then say, okay, this is the base canon, and you can participate in it, and we know who's added these particular new nuances to the story. And then we can then track that, and people can get their fair share, if you will.
No, I think that's super interesting because I think if you use it for something like status, there are we focus on the ones that work, but the ones that don't work don't create any status. And so, especially as like an independent creator, how do you think about that cold start problem of what are you actually offering someone in those early days? And I think, Berti, you said this outside. You've done I think 15 projects over the past 10 years, 10 projects over the last 15 years.
Something like that.
But
it's one of those, or both of those.
You have to kind of recreate it every single time, right? But being able to start from the beginning and slowly scale the audience and scale the engagement and keep it going from one project to the next is huge because you're solving that cold start problem.
It's incredibly hard. It's like of the 15 projects, I think I've only successfully transferred my audience over once. And that was the obvious one. It was going from a Jane Austen project to a Jane Austen project. Like, that worked. But going from even a Jane Austen project was the second one that was about fashion, going to it was a comedy, a rom-com, going into a fashion teen drama. Like, I got maybe 5% transferred over. And, like, there's no overlap between the Lizzie Bennet Diaries audience and the official audience, for Twitch. I mean, it's a sci-fi drama. It's like, it's completely different platform. So, yeah, it's like, it is a cold start problem. It's really difficult.
I mean, you think about why the industry has, especially for like movies, has moved towards franchises. It's because the audience moves from one movie to the next, right? And they're constantly trying to tease out future movies in what you're watching right now, so that you're already primed to go buy that next ticket. This is kind of the equivalent, but with kind of a tech-enabled component to it.
Yeah, I mean, even TV shows, it's like the cop show formula has existed for 40 years, but now we're just like, we're just going to keep making cop shows under the same banners of FBI and Chicago and CSI, and it's like, you don't have to do that. You can just make a new cop show and do your own take on it, but it's just much easier to build off that existing audience.
Well, it's pretty powerful when the audience is building off of themselves, right? So if they're starting to tell the stories, they're telling the stories they want to tell. And so you're just giving them the tools to do so, and then they bring in their friends and their family and the people who love the stuff that they're doing, and we see sort of this level of growth because we're empowering the audience to tell their own stories within our universe. That's pretty amazing.
So both of you are working on blockchain projects. Do you want to talk a little bit about them, where they are? What do you have planned?
Yeah, sure. So in my bio it says I'm the CEO of a company called Meta Theory. It's founded by, I'm one of the founders too, but it was founded by one of the co-founders of Twitch, who really pushed artificial into existence too, so credit to him. And it's if you look at it at the surface, it's a company that builds games within Web3, blockchain, NFTs, and so forth. But I'm not a game designer, so why am I in this company, right? So he brought me on because they said like, hey, I want you to build out the multi-platform interactive storytelling with this. It's like, oh, so you want me to turn this game that every game you guys do, you want me to franchise it out, like as in you want me to take this IP like a Horizon Zero Dawn or a Call of Duty and do the web series of that, and the animated series of that, and the comic book of it, and the interactive component, and the transmedia components, all that. He's like, yes, exactly that. I'm like, cool. Then it makes sense for me to join you guys. Otherwise, it's like, if you just need someone to do a singular TV show, then you should probably go get someone else, right? And so that's what I'm doing. And so, you know, with the idea of canon, we're definitely looking at that very hard. You know, it's going to happen. I'll say that. Otherwise, I'm not going to be there. That's like the purpose of what I'm doing. The idea of making NFTs, which we've done. So we've already sold. We already made in December. You can look it up. The IP is called Dustbreakers. I'm not telling you to buy them. I'm just telling you if you want to research them. This is not financial advice. And I can't honestly say that, you know, it can go up or it could go up or down based on what I say or not. But I don't know. I can't control it, right? So if you want to buy it, cool. If you don't, no problem, right? So it's called Dustbreakers. It's out there. There's 10,000 of them. All this is public, okay? And the crazy thing about this world, and Dustbreakers is not an elite NFT, by the way. It's nowhere near. It's like 1% of Bored Ape, right? It's like, this is not an elite NFT, by the way, but it's also not a failed NFT. It's going along. It's chugging along, all right? And so we're 4 months in. When we minted at 0.6 ETH, which is about $250, $300 at the time each. No, not cheap. You know, like it's a big chunk of change for anything, right? $300. And we sold out all 10,000. And so you do the math there. And so 2.5. So it was like we did plus the transaction fees. I think we made $2.5 million in revenue coming in. And I was like, I think to myself at the time, as someone who's done 10 to 15 shows, generate and crawling, scratching to get, you know, $500,000 of resources even into a project that had 10 hours of airtime. I'm like, this IP did not exist 4 months ago. It is not backed by, it's not based on anything. It's not backed by a major studio or a major like IP generator, like a Skydance or like a Disney. And it just generated this thing, and it made $2.5 million in like a week. I was like, what the, you know, like this is idiotic almost. And I'm not saying to go out and do this, but that's where we are. It's wild. It's a Wild West. Now you could do the same thing and completely bomb it, and go to zero, which has happened too. So there's a lot of nuance here, but that's the opportunity. So this IP, I think of it from canonical legs. So you go, okay, it's Dustbreakers. The IP, just to give you context, it's a ship called the Dusk. It's come to the Earth, and we as humans have to enhance ourselves cybernetically through technology to go onto the Dusk and break the technology and basically mine it. It's like a kind of a mining metaphor here. And the Dusk itself has all sorts of monsters and things you have to fight. Okay, so the 10,000 NFTs, what are they? What are the tokens, okay? And so we said these are the first 10,000 Dustbreakers. They all look different. Some of them look very similar, but there's differences in them. You can see, when you really look, you can see them. And as a story world designer, I go, okay, what are the 10,000 Dustbreakers in the kind of context of a Star Wars? I go, well, these are the 10,000 Jedi. So here are my 10,000 Jedi. I don't necessarily know who is Luke Skywalker or Mace Windu or Anakin or Yoda yet, but that can be determined by the audience, maybe, you know, the buyers, the holders, right? They can vote. Like so now you can do something where I can say, all right, community of the 10,000 holders of Dustbreakers, we are going to deputize who the Luke Skywalker is of this, and we're going to do a vote off, all right? And they could do it publicly voting. You could do it more where you kind of make them have to lift. They have to write a prompt. They have to submit their breaker, the one they're holding, as I want this one to be Luke Skywalker. And it's like, this is the name, this is his history, and so you kind of do off creativity a little bit. There's always ways you can skin this cat. But now you're kind of seeing this as a storyteller. I'm saying that the tool set is there. 10,000 of these characters exist. Most of them will probably not be that important, just like there are not 10,000 important Jedis in the historical Jedi Star Wars universe, but there are 30 or 40 of them that are pretty important out there historically. So that's the opportunity where you look at canonization, you look at value, and if you're the one holding the one that becomes Luke Skywalker, even if it's the most common looking one of the 10,000, not the rarest, craziest looking one, that one becomes Luke, well, that one now has incredible value, right? And then you have things like, okay, if you hold the one, you actually control the IP, you control the character, you actually get to have a say what the character does. That is up to you as the creator of the NFT. You make the rules, and you set the rules, you make the rules, you set the rules. in context, for example, using Bored Ape. Bored Ape, if you have the ape, you have full IP rights. Like you can put on a shoe and sell the shoe for $10,000, and Bored Ape can't take any of that. You can just do it. So it's up to you how you do that. But that's how we're looking at it right now. We have a game out. It's not a very sophisticated game, but the game exists. You can put your breaker into the game. You go around and shoot things on dust. Very simple. We're going to build more games out. And if in the game side of things, those of you who are in the gaming, if you know things like any type of RPG, you spend a lot of time building out that character, your parents will say, you're wasting hours and hours building out this character. It has great value to you personally. It has near zero value to you outside of the game. You can't really sell it unless you're doing it through secondhand. But if that character were a NFT, now you can sell it, potentially. And all those hours you put into World of Warcraft to build a 75 level character could be worth something now. Yes.
So how much of that did you build into this kind of like first iteration of the release, right? Like right now, is it something where in my head, because I was trying to
Go ahead.
simplify it for myself, I was thinking about it almost as like, baseball cards. And so like, I'm hoping that this person is going to go on and have an amazing career.
Yeah.
Did you start also with like IP rights, with royalties? Like, how do you, what is that, how do you iteratively build this universe? Because you want to get started, but you also want to have an eye towards the future.
Of course. So this is an area where I think it's a little vague and we're still defining it. But here's why I think how we're going to do it. So you, as the holder of the Luke NFT or NFT, whatever, Luke Breaker, whatever, okay, that's yours, and I'm going to deputize you, as in creative team. We're going to deputize you with certain choices that we, as the owner of Dusk Breakers, the IP, have to approve. So you get to name your breaker, all right? And you say, I want to name my breaker Nazi pedophile. And I'm like, no, you're not going to do that. Give me a different name, And then ideally, it's collaborative, right? Like you want to fit in the world, okay? So it controls the trollingness of that. So that's something that we would do. We may actually have them do things like because we do this in Artificial. Artificial, the show, did this. Dante Bosco, who's an Artificial, his character was not created until the fans created it for him, like literally on the show. So we know how to do this. We can pipe in personality, relationship with other characters. These are things that, as long as you guide rail it, you can really do some really amazing stuff with audience participation and canonization of characters. And so we're happy to do that. Now, if they start writing fan fiction things and they go off and they do some things that break our canon, we can't take that. We can't stop them from writing fan fiction. We don't want to stop them writing fan fiction, but we can't let them just write fan fiction of things that we know is going to break canon, but we have not revealed yet, like the rules of the world. Okay, so it's a balance of that. I'm trying to figure that out myself. Okay, I think for the IP selling of things, I'm going to take my image of my breaker Luke Skywalker and put him in my shoe, and I'm going to sell my shoe. I don't think we're going to block that. I don't think we have a really way of doing that. I don't think we should. Okay. Now, Luke will evolve and change his clothes, so other imagery of Luke will probably not be controlled by the holder of the original token. So that's, again, I'm speculating here. I'm not saying this is the way it is, but as I've thought about this almost every day for like the past few months, this is where I'm finding that balance of building the audience in, making them feel consequential, but still making sure the story is controlled quality controlled. And not going off into crazy, magic, super science fiction land where things that we say don't exist suddenly exist because a fan had just written into something. So yeah.
Rennie, you've talked about a little bit about how you've started to incorporate it into your world building. Do you have upcoming plans?
Yeah. So one of the things that we do a live stream, several live streams, and it's all tabletop. We are adapting an RPG. It's a storytelling RPG called Microspark Fate, and so we're using that, and we're using that as the mechanics for driving and influencing canon. So what we're doing is, first things, we have what's called the shared cinematic user license agreement. So any filmmaker who wants to adopt this can. It's like the for those of you who play D&D, it's like the OGL, the Open Gaming License. You can create whatever you want in D&D using those basic rules, right? And you can sell whatever you want. So we call it the SKULA. The SKULA allows the audience to essentially, if our IP is under SKULA, you can make your own perfs and put them on shoes. As an example, the perf is a wizard in our shows. So we empower people to do that. But then there's the question about canon. How do you influence canon? Because there's lots of fan fiction, and we love it when people write fan fiction and do all that. We want to empower them because the more they spend time in our environments, the better for us, right? So what people are really wanting to do, though, is add to canon. And so by adopting the Microspark Fate rules and then using this technology, we're trying to gamify. We're trying to gamify it so people can essentially, in a group setting, they'll bid on this is going to be the characters we're playing. These are the powers. These are the things we're going to be doing, and then the audience can participate as well. And so there's nothing in place that we're doing right now. It's all in development. I suspect that we'll have something by the end of the summer to be able to actually start leveraging this. We're doing that, and the other thing is we're doing the 1.0 version, which is we have a card game called Ultimate Dungeon Showdown, and it's every one of our IPs, and anybody's IP can be part of it, and you basically are just using characters from one world and beating up the other characters in another world. Essentially, it's Batman beating up Superman or Wolverine or whatever. And so we've minted some NFTs for that, but again, it's created some disturbance amongst our fans because we're taking. Some people are very much against it, and so they're like, "Well, you can't do that," and we're really upset with you. So we're trying to navigate that right now, while still we want to virtualize the game, the card game, and it's an awesome way to be able to virtualize something, play the game, and then let people trade, and as the value goes up, we see a little bit of it, but everybody else can authenticate this trade. So it's pretty powerful.
So you talked about things being in development, and we keep using this word minting. What does the technical side of this look like? Like, how does one actually get started?
So an example being any of these lovely folks here going, "Hey, I want to start an NFT tomorrow.
Exactly.
How do I do it?"
Exactly.
Okay. So the key person you're going to need is what they call a developer. And that's someone who's going to write the blockchain contract on the blockchain and code it, the rules of that contract into like the 5% royalty. That has to be coded into the thing. Okay, I'm not a developer, so I'm just gonna say you need a developer. Like that's very key. And you need one that's very conscious about security because obviously you're hearing about a lot of hacks. And why that is because it is Wild Westy and there's also just a crap ton of money being thrown around when there are Jpegs of monkeys being sold for $1 million, people are going to try to scam it, right? It's just that's what's going to happen. So trying to block that as well. So you need that. Because we're all presumably all artists in the room, my thinking is you're going to need an artist. Like what's the art being tied to the token, the non-fungible token, the certificate. Okay, so there's different ways to do this. One, you can do generative art, meaning that you have like if you look at the Bored Apes, all the monkeys have the same shape. They all look the same way. They all have the same eye size, but the expression changes and color changes. So you need the generative art system, or you can just make them all different things. So example of a not really inspiring way to do this is that, I made a movie. I'm going to take 1,000 frames of the movie that I like and make each of the frames an NFT. Okay, that's the art. So you could do it that way too. So you got to determine what the art is there. So that's the first, I think, two major key points that you need. And then the third one after that I would say is the community system. If you don't have that, which I know you guys use Discord. We use Discord. Discord seems to be a very popular place to that. So you need the community system, which means you need community managers, and then you also need marketing. How you do that? You could do a guerrilla. We have not thrown any significant dollars into traditional marketing. We've done a Twitter paid ad or something very simple, $50 here, just to see what would happen. Nothing crazy. So it's about networking and communicating with other people in the NFT space, That's where I find a lot is because you want people to buy your NFT, right? Unless you already have an audience, you're gonna need some people to buy it, or else, I mean, if you're selling even 1,000 NFTs at, probably $100 a piece at least. I'm guessing, maybe less, $50. The $50 is still a good chunk of change. It's like you want people to come and join, like support you, and the people who are willing to do that are people who are really into NFTs, and they may not be film connoisseurs. They may not be. They're just kind of like, oh, this sounds like a cool thing, and for some reason they have disposable income at huge amounts, and hopefully they go crazy with you. Like imagine the speculation where, I think I saw this on Twitter, slight tangent, that there was a guy, don't know who he is exactly, and don't know if this is actually true, but I do believe it, that a year ago when Bored Ape came out, he actually minted 30 Bored Apes. 30! Right? And so, how much money is that guy worth right now of these things? Just crazy. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
That's part. I have one last question, and I'm going to open it up to the audience.
Sure.
You mentioned you minted 10,000 for Dustbreakers.
Yes.
Where did those images?
Okay,
yeah.
from?
How did
So
you approach that?
you also have to. This is your developer. Okay, he has to pick which blockchain it's on. So which coin token. We use Ethereum. Okay, you could also use one called Solana. The benefit of Ethereum is that there's a higher volume. There's more money in Ethereum. The drawback of Ethereum is there's a higher transaction fee, not for the royalty, but just the transaction fee on the chain. It's called a gas price. Kind of like how Visa charges the vendor 2% when you use a credit card. Like that transaction fee is actually very volatile on Ethereum for whatever reason. It's really annoying. Then there's another one called Solana, which has a much lower transaction fee, but it's also more crowded. So you have to do your research here. I have NFTs in both of these, and I've seen the frustrations on both sides of them, where because it's more crowded, transactions don't go through, and on Ethereum, transactions are just crazy. The fee is so expensive, where it's like, oh my god, the price of this buy is not even worth it anymore. So there's that. There's also one called Polygon. I have not looked into that one, but I know that people will use it. And there's other ones. There's one called AVAX. I don't even know what AVAX is. I think it's connected to Axie Infinity. I guess, I don't know. So you have to look at that too. But I mean, it really, if you're taking something from this, you want to look at the NFT thing, you got to find the development person. And maybe they're starting to have companies that come up to be the service provider for that. Sure, but do your research. It's so new. It's so new. Yeah.
So you can get an app right now on, if you have iOS, you can create your own NFT right now. There's an app right there for it. I know nothing about it. I was just looking it up a few days ago. Oh, this is fascinating. Something I've run into, if you want to get into it now, great, jump into it right now, because technology is the Wild West. People don't know what the value actually is in any of this stuff. But what I found, if you get into this from a tech perspective, technology costs. There's a lot of cost in technology. But there's also insurance problems. So this is something that nobody ever tells you. If you're running a business and you're doing this, I found that jumping into this space, my insurance tripled. Like from last year to this year, it tripled, because when you're making something available to an audience, they can sue you. Why? Because you're not delivering on the goods, or because something happens on the blockchain, or somehow they've lost whatever. And so, so it's not only do you need this technology, you need an attorney to make sure that you are covered.
You do need an attorney.
Right?
We have an attorney.
Yeah.
I have no idea what our insurance costs are. But in the space, people have gotten hacked. People, and who's responsible for that? People promise things. People do this thing called a rug pull. This is on the investment side of things. So like if you're trying to get into the space and you're starting to buy NFTs, very, very cautious, right? Sometimes people do a lot of hype. Like, oh my God, we have this amazing art and it's gonna have this great mission. We're gonna do this video game. We're gonna make you lots of money, blah, blah, blah. And they can make all these promises, and the NFT comes out and you buy it, and the next day they go, sorry, I'm out of here. Gone, right? And they basically just scammed you, right? And sure, you go like, that's illegal. There should be laws about that. There should be government, SEC should come in. Yes, there should. Not saying they're not. It's still being formed. Like, you were just starting to see the first lawsuits and investigations about this. So, yes, if you get scammed, you want your money back. You know what's better than getting scammed and getting your money back? Not getting scammed. So be very cautious on that area. And because of that, and it's so prevalent, that's what Randy was talking about, the insurance side. Yeah, actually, I wonder what our insurance is. I wonder what it is.
Yeah, it's. I'm sure.
I'm sure it's high.
I'm sure it's high, and because it's distributed, it's on the we can regulate here in the United States, but that does not mean that it's regulated. It just means they're going to say you can't do this on the shores of the United States. So what are people going to do? They're just going to go overseas. They're going to use technologies to buy over in Europe, right? This is what I do. so just these are just things. Do your research. It is a powerful tool for you as creators, and there's lots of possibilities, and we're just on the very beginning of it.
Any questions from the audience? You? Yeah, you?
Okay. In regards to short films specifically, so say you've already made your film. I'm really curious to hear what your thoughts are when it comes to either if it's an advantage point to make it into like actually the whole movie as an NFT when you submit to festivals, if that could be an advantage point, or when you're done with the movie and as a new filmmaker, I mean, distribution contracts can be kind of scary, and the whole thing about maybe protecting yourself with the royalty, like as it goes on too. Would you do the short film festivals and then maybe think about making it into NFT instead of doing distribution? I'm just curious what you think about
Sure. One thing I think you should look up the company Argo, because I know they're a short form distribution company that's playing in the NFT space. I don't know exactly what they're doing. Hilariously, I did buy 2 of their NFTs because I know the guy and I just want to support him, right? But yeah, to me, I'm just like, hey, I'm supporting you. Here's the, it's basically like, it's my friend's Kickstarter, yeah. same idea. So I don't know if the strategy, what strategy specifically is, okay? So I think look at them, like, basically, I'm sure they're asking the world and themselves literally the question you just asked. On the making the NFT side, I'm like, what's the goal? What's the goal of your short film? What do you want it to do?
I mean, I want it to be viewed by as many as possible.
So you're not like, oh, I want to turn this into a feature. Oh, I want to turn this into a TV show.
That would be a great bonus,
But number one is you want first goal. You get one. What's the goal?
I mean, it to be viewed by as many as possible.
View as many as possible. I don't know the answer to this.
So, from the Fantasy Network, so we take in films that are either fantasy or science fiction with genre, and we, for no fee, you come in here and we just make them available to an audience. Just let people watch it and watch it for free. But subscribers can subscribe and they get added benefits. And then there's a distribution to the different producers, to the different creators. We are building out a sort of a blockchain model where you can purchase a film, a movie if you want, and then you essentially, access to this would be on the blockchain or basically out in Web3 so that your film could be accessed using that type of token. So we can track when somebody has access to it, they can download it. It's not like digital rights management, but it's very similar to that. There isn't, from an NFT perspective, like I can't say that I would use that in and of itself for your film. But from a distribution perspective, those technologies are being built on blockchain.
Okay, I think I have my idea. All right, this is not necessarily with your goal. Okay, but just
Well, I mean, make it into a feature.
yeah. So I'm sure you're not the only person here at the festival with a short film, right? And you want aspirations for the short film. So let's actually do parts of your goal. Okay, not NFTing yet, right? Necessarily. You need to do the things that make people watch your film, whatever that is. Maybe it's marketing, maybe it's distribution, whatever that is. I don't think you need NFTs specifically for that, right? Where I think it gets interesting is in success. Keyword success. That means, all due respect to every filmmaker, just because you made it doesn't mean it's bound for success. Just because I made it doesn't mean it's bound for success. It means like an audience or a community or group has latched onto it and now you have some wind in your sails and you're pushing it. Okay, so once you achieve that, all right, for your short film, whether that's viral video, YouTube, whatever it is, winning lots of awards and film festivals like this one, cool, right? So once you have built that community of people that are supporting the idea of this short film, then what I would do, completely shooting from the hip in this conversation, is now I would fractionalize, as in build the NFT, and say they're governance pieces that you're basically selling shares of your IP, okay? And then you take that money, and now you've raised it, and like, hey, we all own together. This is not just Kickstarter where you're just like putting money into a pot. You know, I put in $1,000 to your film. I know I put in $1,000 to film. I have 1,000 points of shares because I bought 5 of the tokens, we'll say. So I have that, and then now you're raising money to do your feature version of it, and now the community has, that you built to sell out those NFTs all want the feature to go, because whether they love you and just love the film or not, cool, or they go like, wow, this thing's gonna 10x my return. That you have 2 reasons now why they're supporting you, and then that success you do the film. Hopefully it sells at Sundance and it goes to Netflix and you make lots of money. You get in the trade. That's how I would do it.
Yeah, that's
Right?
that's a brilliant way. I think that's really smart. Some things to think about there then practically is, so if you're looking to sell it, so there's, you either are going to either sell it or have an audience support you. I don't know how effective it will be to have 10,000 people, give you the equivalent of, let's say, $1 million, and now they own fractional shares of it, and then the studio's going to say, wait a second, if I buy your film, I'm liable to these people. I don't want that liability. That seems too, unless you're now really huge, in which case they'll just figure out a way to buy out those things. So again, you'll need to think about like, well, how can we handle it so that maybe a portion, the studio can own 60% of it. So maybe I only just, I fractionalize 40% to the audience, and then the other 60% I'll own and I'll sell that. There's ways to handle it that I would encourage you to think about on that level, but I think it's a brilliant way to get start seed capital, and then the audience will promote it. They'll do the thing because they want to see their a return on their investment. That's brilliant.
Yeah, and with the thing before, the royalties in the contract, right? You could write in the contract that when you success and you sold the film distribution to Netflix for, let's just say $1 million. Hopefully you get way more than that because Netflix is crazy. But now there's a clean pipeline. The audience sees that you sold for $1 million. You're being transparent to them and saying like, okay, minus the agency fees and the blah 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 blah, these fees, there is now a $500,000 pot that gets distributed evenly across the holders of the tokens. It's very transparent. I think that's amazing.
Yeah.
I'm excited.
Yeah.
Let me know if you do that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Other questions? Hat?
Yeah, so practical application, and thank you for having me understand this. I'm testing my understanding of this.
We're testing our explanation too, because we get asked this all the time.
Okay, great. So current model is I write essays, 300 words, or sayings under 15 words or so. I then copyright those, sell them to my corporation, who then turns them into shorts for TikTok or for YouTube. What's the application for an NFT in that business model?
You're a CEO. You tell me how to do this one.
From your end or from the company end?
Both, because I own the company.
Oh, yeah, well, that makes sense. Yeah, boy, shooting on burn. I'm shooting from the hip here. I know. So, shoot, an application. Again, so let's look at it as contracts. So we've already mentioned the certificate of authenticity idea, right? We know if this is authentic, right? So there's that. But that also implies that we have some type of contract. And so you could build into these contracts, again, you need a developer, but you would need to build into contracts the rights related to that. So,
well,
yeah.
they're copyrighted. So I send them in, they get copyrighted. So there's that whole copyright protection. Then I sell that to the corporation as a protection for them to then market it. So how do I then build into the contract? Where am I building into the contract that you're talking about? Is that in the copyright side? Is that in the marketing side?
So they're in some ways, I think they're two different things. So the copyright is is an established US-based thing that gives you certain protections. NFTs don't give you any protections. The contracts themselves don't give you any necessary protections, but it does define who owns it. So that if you created this thing, this text, okay, you created this text, you're going to copyright it, but what you would probably also do is create some form of token or some contract related to this that says that you own this, and that as it's being created, you will always receive 5% as the original creator. And then if somebody else uses it, they can use it however you define in that contract. And when we say contract, it's a digital type of contract that says these are the ways it can be handled. These are the rules for how it can be handled. It's a little different than copyright. That's how you do it.
Yeah, because copyright just means I get my name at the bottom, no big deal. But
Yeah.
if someone buys an NFT, then I get that. Wow, okay, so that'll clean it up for me. Thank you.
Yeah, in theory. I mean, there's practice as well, right? Because you can't control. So how this works is it's like the JPEG the monkey that we're putting on here, right? It's not an NFT. It's just a copy that we put on the screen, right? Somebody could copy your thing. With an NFT, we're asking the community to participate in the understanding of this value of this thing. So in theory, your meme, like let's say somebody creates an image, the NFT is not going to protect you. Your copyright will, okay? But if somebody wants to participate in this model and spend money or do whatever it is to make money from this thing, you would see some of it, provided that they also agree to participating in this contract.
Thank you.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I'm not a lawyer, so I think you did really well.
Well, I think high level, I would also think about it as, Steve Jobs had this saying, tech should be a bicycle. And what he meant by that was, you take an existing motion and you make it easier, right? You're just trying to kind of 10x something, but the existing thing needs to be happening. And I think sometimes when we look at tech, we want it to be magic, but it really is just making something easier. And so the question I think you want to be asking is like, well, why does someone want ownership? Why does someone want the ability to influence what is happening that I'm doing or that the company is doing, right? And NFTs or Web3 can enable that. They can make it scalable and straightforward and financially successful, but you still need to answer that higher level question of like, well, why does the user want this? Any other questions?
Bernie, when you were describing what you had in the dust breakers situation, you've got these 10,000 out there. So the contract associated with those is already in the blockchain. But then you were talking about the mechanics of how they would affect canon, not really having been determined yet. So is any of that going into that contract in the blockchain, or is that purely a technical function and then you kind of define some of the mechanics?
So the contract in the blockchain, I don't know what specifically the limits of that contract can be. So if I were to write in the contract blockchain a statement in the code that says you get IP rights or you don't, I'm not sure if that's how enforceable that is based on there's not a government body of law. There's not the NFT lawyers and organization out there. So they don't know what Bored Ape does. Like, where does that statement exist where Adidas buys one of the apes and literally has put them on an Adidas shoe and doesn't have to pay Bored Ape anymore because they already bought the ape, right? So I don't know where that exists. So for us, what you have to do is you have to be very, very clear and communicative to the community that has these, that saying these are the rules. That's what I think it is, right? And it's tricky because going back to the technology question with the copyright, this is why I didn't really answer here, because copyright is not tech. Copyright is law. Okay? Tech is like numbers and actions, right? So when a transaction happens, 5% of that transaction automatically is taken off because technology says it is, and put into this point, this wallet, this bank account. Okay? So that's what I mean by the contract says this, right? So you could do things in contracts I know you can do in coins, which is shady as hell. But like you could say like, oh, you can't, you buy, let's say we make a Stareable coin, right? Actually, so it's a Stareable coin, and there's 10 million of them, and you say, you all can buy Stareable coin, it's gonna go to the moon, it's gonna be, 10x20, and I write into the contract, in the code, you cannot sell more than one Stareable coin a day. You're just like, wait, what? Like, I have 10,000 of these coins, I wanna sell all 10,000 now and be an instant millionaire. No, you can't, because that's in the contract. So if you sold a coin, you have to wait 24 hours. You can do that in the contract, because that's technology. That is code limiting a wallet and a sale, right? Those of you who know basic coding know that you could write that into a program right now. So that's where, again, not being a developer, knowing where that border is where it's still the Wild West. I really don't have a clear answer for you, but I know what we're doing. What you're saying is what we're doing. We're going to be very communicative when we set the rules. We have not set the rules yet to it. We have canonized some of our breakers, and we've told the community that these are canonized breakers because they've won contests or they've done different things for us, and so we've done that, we've rewarded them. But we haven't said who owns that rights. We haven't done that yet, and we'll get there. We will.
Yeah, and so for us, the way that the game mechanic works is all programmed, but that is separate from the contracts in the blockchain. So we leverage aspects of the NFT or the contracts in the blockchain aspects of it, but the actual mechanics for playing the game are totally separate. So a way to think about this for like a digital card, somebody can spend $5 and get a pack of digital cards. They own those cards and they're theirs. But in order to be able to trade them, they're also recognized, the certificate of authenticity, which is that on the blockchain, right, that certificate is connected to those cards. So how the cards work, and the digital cards work, is a programmed thing, but in and of themselves has nothing to do with what's defined in the blockchain. But when I would go to sell it to somebody else, that unique ID is transferred to somebody else. They now have that card, and that's all defined on the blockchain, loosely defined, or connected on the blockchain. So now you own that card, and the financial transaction, I get a percentage of it. You've made the transaction. That's, again, different technology. But who owns it or who is connected to it is sort of defined on that blockchain. Does that sort of help?
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
We have time for one last question.
Or not.
Okay.
Do you have a question?
I don't.
I'm trying to think if I have a question. I'm actually thinking more on this whole short film. I'm trying to think about it from the. Oh, you have a question?
Sort of.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
I'm kind of formulating it in my head as I'm listening to you. So I have a web series, and at the time, my actors, they're union actors. This technology and this didn't exist, of course.
Mhm.
And I know there's always that line, you sign your rights to release your image, perpetuity, and all technology for blah, 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 blah. But this almost falls under, if I was to make NFTs of my web series, it feels like it's almost like merchandise that I'm making and selling. Like if you think about it in terms of playing cards.
Yeah.
So I don't know, have you heard of the actor unions coming back and going, because it's their image that I'm using.
So I have a lot of thoughts on this. All right. So.
It's not a clear question, but.
No, it's not, right? But you have distribution abilities, and the unions have claiming rights based on what you sell it to, and whatever, and residuals and all that stuff. So I understand that. I not a lawyer. I do think that the classification in the current state is it's merchandise, okay? Because it's not content. It's it's just merchandise. So what I think is super interesting is two things here. Number one, because it's very transparent, right? And you have a let's say with your actors, you've written a very clear merch contract. So any merch we have with your likeness on it, you get 10%, okay? So that's in your contract that's not a blockchain contract, it's your written contract with your actors, okay? I've done that, I'm sure a lot of people have done that too. So now it's actually pretty clear. You can just go mint your NFTs with all your stars on them, and obviously they may be confused, but I'm it's very transparent. Look, it's a thing. You see it sell very publicly. I'm not hiding. You can see all the transactions. You see this hero image of you looking badass sell for $3,000. you're gonna get 15% of that because that's in your contract. So I actually like that a lot. I think it's an untapped area that you can kind of really revolutionize this. It's something where I've thought about for my shows that have big audiences. Like, you know, if I were to make some NFTs of Lizzie, Bennet, Diaries or Number Proof that have very dedicated audiences, and I communicate with the actors very clearly. It's like, look, we have a merch contract. You know, we could renegotiate a merch contract too. I'm saying you can't do that. But I just want to make this transparent. I just want to make people money. You know, we'll get money, you'll get money. Like everybody wins, right? So I think that's super interesting there. The next level of thinking of this too is IP rights in character. Okay. Now it gets crazy. So those of you actors and have played many roles, unless you're the producer of that thing, you know 0 rights of the character, right? So like Robert Pattinson has no rights to Batman. Okay, so as an example, that's extreme because a lot of people have played Batman, but like singular people like Mark Hamill has no rights to Luke Skywalker. But in order to do Luke Skywalker, you kind of need Mark Hamill, right? So it's kind of this weird relationship where Disney has to go, well, we need Luke Skywalker again. It's like, okay, Mark Hamill people, Mark Hamill wants $10 bajillion. Like, okay, I guess this is how we do this. So there's that. And so if you have a thing with a successful IP and you have the Luke NFT and it's even fractionalized, let's say it's like just the Luke collection, and you do it where you have it where it's like, we're going to own the Luke character 50-50. I'm going to give you, Mark Hamill, half of the collection. I'm going to keep half the collection. You can sell how many you want. I can sell how many I want. But we as a collective decide what happens to the Luke IP. I don't know how that'll land. Go.
Yeah, so there's a couple things around this. Okay, let's talk first about the merchandise. So it's a certificate of authenticity. So one way that we use, one way we're handling this is right now we stream things for all our producers using Vimeo, right? But Vimeo hosts everything there. There's a cost to that for us to have everything there. We have a limit. Within Web3, you're going to hear a lot about distributed technologies. So you may or may not have heard of what they call the swarm, which is thousands and thousands and thousands of computers that host all the contents, right? So what we're looking at is putting all the content of all our producers, as long as they agree to this, out on the swarm. The swarm is basically computers everywhere, anywhere. We don't know where it resides, it's everywhere. And what happens is you can then access this content as a subscriber, and on the blockchain you'll say, I want to watch Journey Quest, and it's just out there. What happens is it looks up on the blockchain, I'm an owner of this particular subscription, and I need access to it here, and it goes out and I can stream it from anywhere in the world. I don't have to go to Vimeo. So that's one aspect of leveraging the blockchain technology to get to it. When you think about merchandising, one thing I would encourage all of you to do is just update your contracts. I honestly don't think it really does matter because right now I'm allowed to do anything with my actors' images. Make games, do whatever, put them on video games. And NFTs are just, in and of themselves, it's just a certificate of authenticity. So what we're doing is we're creating a digital image, which we're already allowed to do, and just stamping it. But as Bernie said, the brilliant thing about it is we can actually give them money and trace that much easier. And I think it's, as long as we sell that to our actors and help them understand it, that's where our roles need to be, is to help them understand why they're not getting screwed. It's a better deal for them, because most actors don't see merchandising.
It's also very, very auditable. For my shows that have merch, I'm sure at least some of the actors are like, they're probably ripping me off on the merch, and I'm going to say probably not. I'm not the accountant, but as far as I know, our books are updated. So, it's like you have it to be automatic. I was like, I don't need to update any books. The transaction just does it, right? Like it just goes over. And I was like, there's nothing to audit here. Like you can audit yourself. That sounds awesome. Like,
yeah, one example that I have is we have this card game, and I have an image of an individual on there. And what has happened is that image has gone for people sell this card, and you buy this pack of cards for $15 or whatever, but this one card is actually very, very valuable. And this person's gotten sort of upset because this card's going for like $50. I've seen nothing of it. Why is that? And say, I have no control over that. But within this space now, because of the contracts, when you transfer it digitally, they will see that. And that's a really powerful and empowering way for the authors to say, no, I'm going to sign on to this. I will definitely give you my image that way.
All right. Please give me a round. Join me in giving our guests a round of applause. Thank you so much. Our next workshop is going to be 3:30, which is going to be awesome. The Unreal Engine for Filmmakers Fellowship in Stage 2.
On the big screen.
On that incredible
Dude.
LED screen.
I'm telling you, whether you're going to do it or not, it's freaking cool.
Yeah, it's going to be super cool. Please join us.
Lunchtime.